Hello.
Good afternoon. Hi, Bogdan.
Hey guys.
Hey.
All right, not sure we are getting more people, so let's get started. So welcome to 2023, October 5th, Aries V6 community call. Hyperledger antitrust policy notice is in effect, as displayed on the screen. And let's jump into our agenda, which is fairly rich today. I think there might be some discussions. Do you guys have any things you would like to add here? You would like to get addressed? I take it as a no, so let's continue. All right, so community updates. I think there's nothing really in particular. Let me edit this page a bit. I was yesterday on a Aries War group call, so I got some some light shed on some of the issuance protocol issues. I think we'll get to that, so I'm not gonna actually talk about it right now. Let me just quickly check if there's any updates on this issue. Seems like nothing particular in the thread. I'm not sure if any releases has been done. So I think let's skip over that. Mentorship updates, we don't have Nayan on the call today, so no updates from Nayan, I guess. But she's working on basically putting integrating the pickup protocol and all the languages which Mediator speaks to get it basically run through DITCOM. So that's what she's currently busy with. George, how is it looking with UniFFI? Any updates there?
No, nothing major. Yeah, we were just looking through the issue credential protocol together and started working on some of the APIs, and yeah, Swapnil seemed comfortable with it.
Right.
And I'm happy with it.
How about we're switching to the Anon Credex Anon creds. Is it going to be fine with the UniFFI if we drop the VDR tools implementation?
Yeah, we haven't swapped yet. I remember there was issues with I forgot what it's called with libzmq with that binary dependency.
Right.
But yeah, I think it should be fixable, hopefully.
We're gonna shuffle the cards a bit, but yeah, I think you still got some time on. In a worst case, it can be based on, it can be based off. It can exist. The development can exist in some sort of dev branch. If the transition is kind of delayed, and then just update to zero, update to the Credex whenever Swapnil is ready. We have a 9 join the call. Hi 9.
Hi.
I kind of gave update for you very briefly that you're busy with integrated DITCOM with all the languages Mediator is speaking. Is there any other updates you'd like to give on your project?
Yes, mostly that. So in the previous week, I had demonstrated a proof of concept about the connection being completed from the client to the server, and the connection kind of being persisted by the server side. But that was a bit of a hack because it didn't involve the mediator coordination protocol. I just saved it when the server saw any connection happening from any of the clients. So from then, this week, I was implementing things to do that properly, and that involved, for example, using these custom messages like mediator coordination protocol, for which we discussed over Tuesday some of the essentials that were missing for that. And I think a PR was merged just this Wednesday that enabled the encryption envelope to take arbitrary message as a sequence of bytes. So yeah, there's been this thing of building the essentials first for the implementation. Similarly, there were some functions missing in the mediator persistence trait. For example, for retrieving accounts, the mediator persistent state was designed with the understanding that you will always know which client is connecting and you'll need details only for that client. But for example, if you're using a TUI, then you need to know what all accounts you have saved from before. Like you need a list of all contacts. So what I've been doing is adding functions to mediator persistence and also to the mediator repository, the agent structure, to enable all of this. So right now it's adding all those basic functions that are required. And yes, now the work will continue to actually add the mediator coordination protocol and so on.
Cool. That sounds great. You already, I guess, kind of covered a bunch of stuff which I listed here. This is for the overview of work done. You had a number of PRs past week, so kudos on that. Kudos on your Aries VCX core contributions, essentially. That's really awesome. Is there, I know you have a PR open. Is it something that can be reviewed? I'm not really fully aware, kind of sure what's the state of the PR and what's actually in there. Haven't looked recently, to admit.
977. So it's I think I'll have something in a like a feature edition sometime today or tomorrow. So it'll be fine to kind of wait on the review for this PR right now.
Okay, so I guess ping me when you are ready with like review, and we can go through it.
Yes, I'll be adding the UI for listing all the contacts on the client side, and so the functionality for the server side of saving the contacts in a proper procedure is done. And yeah, from the client side, listing all the contacts so you can send messages to a particular contact that you have saved. That functionality is what I'm working on right now. When that is done, I will like ping you to have a look.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's go ahead with the other updates. So yeah, we had actually 2 releases in the past week. So first one was 059, which was pretty rich. It's been, I guess, a long time after 058, apparently, given a number of PRs which have been changed since then. So I don't know, I guess just quickly, some CI docs changes, dependencies being trimmed a little bit, OpenSSL was replaced, testing was improved dramatically. Mainly kudos to Mira for all these PRs. It made testing a lot more sensible since 058. Then we had also kudos to Swapnil, who did lots of work between these 2 releases for the UniFi app and wrapper. We had refactorings, kind of decluttering the state machines, solving out the biggest crimes in some of them, as I like to say, removing the IO, which was enforced in issuance and verification, and there was inconsistent approaches. It was very convoluted. Then there was some fixes. What was it? So we had some DIT-peer related stuff, some CREDX stuff, CREDX, formatting, lints, and Node.js sync up. So yeah, mostly related to CREDX, DIT-peer, and there was some features. So world migration, we'll talk about that in a second. And the issue credential v2 message structures, and then some of the APIs were changed, mainly related to the protocols and the trimming of the enforced message sending from those state machines. And also here, contribution from Nayan, changing the Aries VCX core trait signature. So as it's apparent, was lots of effort coming here to CREDX. Mainly kudos to Bogdan here for all the migration and implementation stuff there. So with 059, consequently, we kind of finalized the migration process to migrate the VDR tools and on crates based wallet to CREDX based wallet, still assuming the usage of the VDR Tools wallet. That's still in place. However, this release is now marking kind of a milestone where in our next release we're gonna drop support for VDR Tools unknown creds, so only CredX will stay in place. So that's iconic news. We had refactoring from 9, which was reported on already. Lots of great stuff in terms of refactorings and cleanups, trimming stuff up from Bogdan. So there was kind of repo-wide change where the arcs were replaced by generics as much as possible. That has been merged a while ago, and then subsequently we got merged yesterday a PR which is deleting lots of old styled mocking we had in place and deleting lots of tests which doesn't really bring much value anymore. I don't know, any comments or questions for all of the work reported on any of the items? Well, it has been reviewed, so I guess no surprises here. And lastly, there was some minor changes to connection protocol to accommodate basically Nine's use case, again, removing the enforced IO and automatic problem report sending. So that's some breaking changes to be aware of here, especially the auto problem reports are not sent automatically now. You gotta check your VCX, you gotta check your results of transitions and decide to send problem reports on your own. We have some parked items, demo for Aries VCX. There's some discussion ongoing. I have to address yet some comments. Repo reorg that's been discussed, that's parked. I'm wondering if we're gonna have opportunity anytime soon here to do it, but Bogdan is busy still with more refactoring. I was doing
That's actually done. I plan on removing the VDR tool stuff next. So the trade objects thing in libvcx is done. It's up for reviews. The CI is almost done too. So yeah.
Cool. So I guess perhaps after that we could do the reorg. Do you think?
The workspace reorganization.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking that maybe it might be more suitable to do that after the mentorship projects are done. I remember George said something about the wrappers, directories. Like if we cannot do them right now, since there are some scripts using them and there are some paths in there, and it gets a bit convoluted. So, I mean, this is not urgent, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that when it impacts less people, it's just easier to handle.
Fair enough. We can do that too. It's doesn't seem urgent. At the same time, I guess whenever there's like a less work going on, it's always a chance to do it. But yeah, we can postpone it. It's fine. George?
Yeah, I'd prefer that. I've sort of been holding off on some work because I'm anticipating that to cause me a lot of grief. So yeah, if that's being done after the mentorship, then yeah, that helps Swapno, and it also helps me go along with the work I want to do.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just it's good to keep it in mind. We have a plan what we want to do, so that's good. Did exchange is parked, but as I have one of the items here in a planned list, should start working on DITPeer 4, which shouldn't be too challenging given it's similar to DITPeer 2 and 3. It's kind of a combining DITPeer 2 and 3, as far as I know. So this shouldn't be too hard, I suppose, to implement. And once that is done, we can then resync up DIT-Exchange with the DITPeer 4 and get it merged. And then take it from there, get the AATH interrupt, and so on. In review, okay, now coming to important big topics here. So the V2 issuance and presentations. Where is it? Right, there we go. So I don't have, unfortunately, I haven't been able to spend much time yet looking at this, but I do have the one of the top priority for me today is to go through this very thoroughly, and I would like to study up on the spec and kind of really get good understanding and also of the approach. I do have some comments though, just very high level, something that that met my eye. So two things I kind of left here, not yet submitted a review. Well, I'll start with a light one. I was just wondering, there's the naming. It says Hyperledger Indy. I was thinking of maybe rather something along UnknownCreds or UnknownCreds 1 instead of the Hyperledger Indy. What do you think, George?
That was intentional. Hyperledger Indy is the name of the format, and then there's another format for credentials V1. They're very similar in format. There's just some differences in structures. But the reason I went with implementing Hyperledger Indy format first is because that's what Akapi and that's what AFJ support as well.
Right, and you said there's another similar format. What is that?
Yeah, so in the issue credential V2 RFC, there's like those tables with a registry of the different formats. And if you look in them, there'll be an entry for HL Indy and then an entry for UnknownCreds for pretty much all of them.
Right, Hyperledger Indy credential abstract and okay. Do you know what's the difference between these two?
They're pretty much exactly the same. Some of the differences I've noticed is that some of the like Hyperledger structures will say they'll say issuer did, but then the UnknownCreds ones will say issuer ID because they're trying to de-Indy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
right.
They're very similar, but everyone's gone with HL Indy, at least at first, in Akapi and AFJ.
Fair enough. Okay, that explains that. So I think my comment, I think I'll just delete my comment or just answer it for clarity if anybody else would come with the same question. Anyway, it's not submitted yet. So then another thing I kind of saw here, and it's like, I mean, these are minor. It's just first thing I kind of saw. Yeah, so so there's this prepare offer method. Let me maybe open up in IDE. Where can I find it? What I'm looking for. Right. So prepare offer, it returns the state, basically the new state. I know in DIT-Exchange PR, which is not yet merged, but the approach taken there was that on success we return both the new state and the message generated, and we are kind of not really storing Aries messages as part of the states. We just return them whenever the transition is success. So perhaps, yeah, that's something I know we're considering, the trade-off. I mean, either of the two PRs is not yet merged, but and there was not enough reviews on the exchange, so I'm not sure what's the global consensus between all four of us. So I'm just kind of pointing out the difference maybe now that we are only returning state here, but in the exchange we're returning both state and the new message, and we don't store the message in the state like we do here. So
yeah, it's easy to switch between them. I was just sort of copying what all of the other state machines are like. I hadn't had a look at the did exchange one.
Right. Okay, well, just put it out there. And then last thing I noticed, and I didn't have enough time to study it, just raising question right there. In the V1 implementation of the issuance protocol, we had this offer set state where we stored credential JSON as a string. The problem with that was that actually the credential JSON could be a JSON in one of three different formats we supported. And those three formats are then kind of parsed out, supported in the encode credential function, if I remember right. So I'm just wondering if that's kind of been solved here, if there's still this kind of ambiguity of the format, or I don't know if you have run into this kind of dilemma or this problem, been considering this.
Would you say that sort of exists because of I guess legacy reasons where libvcx was just taking in this like JSON of credential, and then it was sort of interpreted in different ways because there's no typing? Is that where the problem came from?
Yeah, kind of. So let me find the function encode. I think it was encode. I have a link here where it was kind of, there was a pull request from Stevane, contributor, which didn't end up landed. It's still open. But I had this kind of discussion, basically discussing this problem that we have a function encode attributes somewhere, and that's taken apparently I don't remember specifically apparently, but it was kind of taken quite stringy inputs, and I think those inputs can be one of these three things. And that was kind of this issue where already also on the level of the state machines. So I think it would be good to, with this new implementation, to kind of, I don't actually know what's the most kind of common format or the most desired format we actually want to use. I don't remember on top of my head, but I guess choose one of them and then kind of make sure that the typing is fixed on the state machine level as well, and probably refactor the encode attributes to down the road.
Yeah, I went with just a map of string to string for when you're an issuer creating a credential.
Okay. That's just a few things I noticed so far, and I'll be definitely digging deeper today. But yeah, I don't know, Bogdan, did you have time to have a look at this?
Not yet, no.
All right. So
I'll try to have a look after the purging VDR tools. But yeah, this will take a while to review.
All right. Okay, so just bear with us, George. But I'll be definitely it'll be my top priority today as far as Aries V6 goes.
Cool. Okay, I might have some questions at the end that maybe Bogdan can help me with, but we'll come back to that.
Okay, so issuance, that's in review. Then in progress, it's something I started here to kind of mark out the end of VDR tools and creds Just wanted to drop the building VDR tools stuff in CI to kind of speed it up as a low-hanging fruit, which turned out to be a little bit less. It wasn't as low as I thought, as I ended up tweaking out features and doing like minor code changes here. So I don't know, maybe I'm not sure if I'll. It's kind of a side task I started doing. I'm not sure if I'll finish this before Bogdan will start dropping VDR tools or not, but I guess one of us will ending up doing this. So it's kind of in progress. We'll see how it goes. And then yeah, the PR which Bogdan started today, open up today, is a kind of continuation in the refactoring with the generics and concrete types in LiB6 core. Bogdan, any comments here?
Well, nothing really nice, I guess, to say. This has been a mess from top to bottom, and it's still kind of messy. Honestly, I cannot look forward enough to sometime in the future just dropping this whole VCX thing. It's very, very badly designed. But yeah, I basically took advantage of the fact that we're gonna remove VDR tools and essentially use the Credix implementation. Like the point was to get rid of trade objects wherever possible, for the simple reason that having it like that enables us to be more specific in the interface definition when we're going to refactor these traits. And the trade objects served absolutely no purpose anyway, apart from just erasing the type, I guess, for convenience reasons, and arcing things around again for convenience reasons. But it really doesn't, like, conceptually or logically has no use. And it actually just complicates things very much when trying to establish ownership between components and I guess the data flow of how and where things originate and what they're going through. But yeah, anyway, it's one piece of the puzzle. I guess there's still a lot of work to do in refactoring these interfaces and getting them to be in a nicer format and with a better interface, better API. Yeah, but this was basically just a step towards that.
Are we removing LiB6 core Clippy?
Those were there because I removed the feature flags since we're only going to use Credix. So I removed the feature flags since they're redundant, right? There's only the Credix implementation now. And these two jobs were basically testing with feature flags, with different feature flags, which is not necessary anymore. The workspace Clippy, like the workspace wide Clippy, will take testing these as well.
I see. Cool. That's good. Wonderful. Lighter, we're gonna be lighter by 800 lines of code. That's great. All right. What's next? So planned tasks. So as I mentioned, we'll be doing 0.60 release as soon as VDR tools and Credix is gone, which should be happening, I don't know, perhaps next week, I guess. And then just obviously the wallet will Bogdan.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I'll actually start that today, maybe finish it tomorrow, I guess.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so this I really want to get rid of that as well. Since it's also
I think I'll drop my PR because it's incomplete anyway, and you'll be doing this. You can just delete everything all at once, so it's not little by little.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess the plan is to only keep the wallet, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I had a kind of a thought here. Since we are obviously keeping the wallet from VDR tools, I was wondering if we shall perhaps have a separate separate Rust workspace, so then it would be actually possible to contribute Ascar without worrying about dependency conflicts.
They might be solved by now.
Hmm.
It's worth trying
I
before having two workspaces. It sounds a little sketchy.
Where would you even put that, for one? And two, yeah, I mean, I guess you can organize them in different workspaces if you actually want to create them, but yeah, that seems sketchy to me too. And another thing to consider is that with the removal of so much code from VDR tools and keeping only the wallet, dependency conflicts should not be that big of a problem anymore. So we could even like hop in and tweak the dependencies to, match versions as well.
Yeah, that's true. It should be easier now, but I don't know. I mean, I never like attempted to actually do like separate workspace, but wondering if it can make sometimes a sense in a repo to have multiple workspaces when you kind of, because for VDR tools, for example, we put it into the repo because wanted to kind of keep all changes like in a kind of single governance to see all the changes in one repo that keep PRs. At the same time, it's really kind of separate project, which originally lived like used to live like a third-party dependency. I think it actually makes sense to kind of separate out these kind of foreign projects. But I mean, we don't have to do it. Just kind of brainstorming here.
The thing is that if this is about like helping with the dependency resolution and versioning, this is not going to help at all, because even if you separate them in different workspaces and you kind of declare their own individual dependencies, but when you use, let's say, the wallet, which is in a separate workspace, and you use it in Aries VCX, which is in its own workspace too, there's still dependency resolution happening.
That's right.
It doesn't fix anything at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So never mind. Well, I guess if it would. This is different discussion. Let's not get stuck on this. I was just wondering, but thanks for discussion anyway and ideas. I might be missing something, so let's just move on. So as I mentioned, we want to do the DID Peer 4. That's going to be important to get the DID exchange kind of up and running, and in the repo. Obviously, next up, then also this is just what we discussed. We want to update SQLX dependencies, something Nyan pointed out last week. This should be hopefully now easier to do once we drop the VDR tools. So I guess that would be planned for like perhaps next week to do this, and then continue with the issuance presentation protocols. This will be also one of the priorities now, getting the review and keep supporting George in implementation. George?
Yeah, I'll start on the presentation message structures. I think that should be pretty non-controversial, controversial. So yeah, should be good.
Okay. Well, and that brings us to our end meeting discussion. We have 20 minutes. George had something you wanted to discuss about the protocols. I have some points here I put here before the call. So first thing, I was just thinking about given the addition of the protocols we will be adding now and in the future, given how fluid the Hyperledger Harry's kind of ecosystem is, and protocols kind of keep coming and being versioned. There's, in fact, I found out recently that there is, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but there is issuance v3 protocol existing. And apparently it's also, can I find it? Aries issue credential v3. There we go. So there is issuance v3. There is also presentation v3. And these are adjusted for the DITCOM v2 formats already. So this is not really implementable currently, even because we don't support DITCOM v2. But once we actually implement DITCOM v2, then the next logical step, the next milestones after that will be actually implementing, perhaps the 3.0 to exchange credentials over DITCOM v2. But interesting thing is, so first of all, it says proposed here. Actually, it's been implemented. It just the status is kind of wrong, as I found on yesterday on a Aries workgroup call. Secondly, interestingly, I think I was told, if I get it correctly, this protocol was created before the v2 was finalized. So I'm not sure how they relate to each other. It does mention like v2 here, so it's kind of based on top of that, I suppose, but not sure if there's any other incompatibilities between them other than the DITCOM v2 format related changes. George.
Did it ever get merged into the Aries RFC repo?
Yeah, this is merged in Aries. Okay, wait. This is some other. This is other repository, right?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, interesting. I didn't realize that. I think I saw this. This is decentralized identity. Right. I guess it's under decentralized identity, perhaps because the DITCOM v2 itself is kind of under decentralized identity foundation. So I'm not sure if there's plan to put this under a Hyperledger, actually. I'm not sure. Just thinking on top of my head here.
Right, because I don't know, maybe that's a bigger question of if it's not an Aries protocol, should we support it?
Well, yeah, not now, but once we do DITCOM v2, then we want to have it because the issue credential protocol 2.0 wouldn't work under DITCOM v2.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is like, so I was asking yesterday if I was pointing out some things I would like to, raise a question to change about this, something about the formats. Also, I don't really like these payments here. There's a payment decorator, and I got I think we didn't discuss it deeply, but Sam Curran, he seemed to be in line with my complaint or the open question I raised about whether payments belong here, and then it might be rather like separate protocols to handle payments. So wouldn't be surprised actually, and also given the DITCOM v2 developments, the DITCOM v2 is not completely finalized yet, as far as I know. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's gonna be issue credential protocol 4.0 with some DITCOM v2 further adjustments, perhaps some breaking changes, removing the payments if we can push that. So I think by the time we actually implement DITCOM v2, then Euler might be 4.0, kind of the next version for DITCOM v2. So we might end up just maybe we'll end up skipping this one and we'll just do 4.0 if it exists at the time. We don't have to worry about this. I just kind of wanted to let you guys know what's going on and what's happening. I wasn't aware of this, so just sharing that knowledge.
Is there much change? Is it sort of like the decorators?
The main thing changed here is the attachment formats, which are different. So another thing I learned on this Aries workgroup calls is that basically in DITCOM, the kind of main difference between DITCOM v1 and DITCOM v2 are two things. One, first of all, connection protocol, DID exchange protocol no longer exists. DITCOM v2 kind of have its own kind of streamlined mechanism for exchanging the keys, and it's kind of all based on DIDs. So you really don't you don't have a connection abstraction. You really just have a DIT, and you talk to that DIT, which is much cleaner. I mean, so you share your typically DIT peer 4 DID to the other party. The other party shares their DIT peer, and that kind of exchanges all the keys necessary. And it's kind of a built into the DITCOM v2 itself. So that's the first thing. With DITCOM v2, there's no connection protocol, there's no DID exchange protocol anymore. It's just kind of native. And then second thing is the kind of in terms of the message format, is that the attachments look different. So in DITCOM v1, there was, I believe, 3 different ways or styles of dealing with attachments. One of them being most prominent, most commonly used. And then in DITCOM v2, they selected they selected just one of those 3 methods, but it's different than the one which was commonly used in DITCOM v1. So hence the changes, the changes done here in terms of attachments. I think it's mentioned, yeah, as you see, it's align attachments with DITCOM v2 format. So I guess that's the main change in the 3.0.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for that info. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Okay, so yeah, I kind of got actually how did I ended up here? I wanted to talk about testing. Okay, I remember where I started. So the point here was to illustrate that we'll be adding the v2 protocols which George is working on. So now we'll have v1 and v2 issuance and presentation, and it would be getting kind of the same coverage. We have certain coverage right now on the integration testing, just using lots of it's most of the tests are using the kind of basically running some sort of DID exchange and credential issuance and then presentation. But basically these protocols are kind of misused as how do you say this in English? It's just kind of a tool to actually test the AnonCreds implementation. Like oftentimes we have tests which are testing the revocation, issue this and that credential, then revoke one, then rotate revocation registry, then send some proof requests and verify they're valid or whatnot. And so what's actually being tested in those tests is really, whole kind of things related to AnonCreds and revocations, things like that. Just using the state machines for it because it's easy to, use them to get credentials issued and then to request presentations. But so it wouldn't make sense now to try to reflect all of the tests we have for v1 issuance state machines to reflect them, on the v2 George's implementation, because most of these tests are not really targeted to test the state machine itself, rather the kind of underlying AnonCreds stuff. So I think it's more than enough than actually have like maybe in many cases just one, one and two, some happy case and non-happy case flow for the state machines. And rather the existing integration tests, they should be kind of pulled down to Aries VCX core, really operating on top of these AnonCreds interfaces, and just kind of build up kind of a workflows, to do the issuance without the whole state machine and the Aries messaging charade around it, which is going to be kind of work to do. Essentially, re-implementing the state machines and the Aries workflow, but a lot streamlined. So really just do the necessary thing to create an offer and then get a credential issued and stored in a wallet. So and then once we do that, we can simplify, we can trim out lots of tests from Aries VCX and really make sure that they are targeting what they should be targeting, which is the Aries workflows and the Aries messaging and the whole, Aries thing end to end and the state machines. So in the end, I think, it should be enough to have kind of 1 or 2 tests for V1 issuance and presentation protocols, equally 1 or 2 tests for the George's new implementation of these state machines. So we don't have to do like 20 tests whenever we are adding new version of, new version of issuance protocol. Seems like there's going to be a bunch of them. What do you guys think? Does it make sense?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think we should be sort of testing the Aries VCX core stuff directly. Because something with issuance V2, doing integration tests on that doesn't really test much because it's using, or at least when you're doing the Hyperledger format, it's using the same stuff that issuance V1 is using. At least the same core. So yeah, it's not really proving much more than already is proven.
Yeah, so I think that's perhaps as you are implementing these, just having, especially if we are not doing the proposal stuff, which I suggest we do not do because it's not, apparently you are not customer of that, and we are not as AppSci, we are not customer of that either. And I guess we'll be adding, we'll be migrating again to like V3 or V4 version for DITCOM V2. Then maybe we do it there if there's interested parties in having those proposals. Right now, there's not really users, and just adding extra test cases which are not really needed. It looks cool that we have a good coverage in AATH, but apparently it's not really that valuable for anyone yet. So yeah, I think having like 1 or 2 tests, end-to-end tests for each of these protocols is more than enough right now.
Yeah, agreed. As long as core is getting some good coverage.
Yep. All right. Next item I had here, we are reaching to the end, but what was this? Okay, just kind of thinking about kind of long/medium-term goals. Obviously, AnonCreds RS support eventually. I don't know how kind of we're gonna approach it, but that's ultimate goal where we should be heading eventually. And perhaps one kind of a goal to maybe a goal which can drive this effort will be implementing DID-Web AnonCreds method, which is kind of really the simplest of them all. You don't need some foreign ledgers, nothing. You just publish the AnonCreds primitives on HTTP and try to get it implemented, and having resolver, for the DID-Web AnonCreds method, and have this as an ultimate goal to drive the AnonCreds RS migration. And then second thing I was thinking is that we should start looking at least, or having some experimental implementation of DITCOM v2, not necessarily implementing any of the protocols like the issuance and presentation. We can do that later. But implementing the DITCOM v2 should be actually fairly simple, I believe, once that we have DITPeer 4 in place, which should be soon. So there was this very cool demo yesterday on the Aries workgroup call. If you take a look at the page, there's a DITCOM demo DITCOM. There's this website. Essentially, we don't really have time to demo this, but multiple people can kind of connect here and message with each other, kind of have a chat, and it's kind of working through DITCOM v2 in the background. And it was very cool yesterday. You can take a look at the recording or at the wiki page. It shouldn't be too hard to implement DITCOM v2 actually. So I would like to kind of, I don't know, I think it would be nice to have experimental implementation by the end of the year, which I think is definitely possible and wouldn't be too much effort. And then we can later on start thinking about the supporting the perhaps issuance presentation protocols, but it's not really something to worry about, just to kind of keep up with the ecosystem, which seems to be moving more and more towards it's the DITCOM v2 is getting more and more frequent word in the community. Well, I don't know if there's no comments, then perhaps George, you had some points. We are short in time, but
It's all good. It's sort of a quick question. Maybe you guys can help me with while I have you here.
let's do it.
Okay, so you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Is the text legible, or should I increase the size?
Yeah, maybe get a bit bigger wouldn't be bad. Could you increase the text size a bit?
Yeah, is that better?
Slightly, yeah.
Make it
Should be
big
fine,
if
I guess. That's okay. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that's definitely better.
Okay, there might be lag then. But yeah, I've just been rebasing some of the changes, and a lot of those changes is the switch from arcs to using generics. And since Bogdan's on the call, maybe you can help me out with a little problem I'm having. But essentially, this is the format trait. This is an implementation of the format trait for the issuance v2 stuff, if you recall. So there's like the trait for the format, and then you implement your different formats for the different formats. You implement that trait for the different formats. So this is the Hyperledger Indy implementation of that format. And it has a bunch of associated types for all the different stuff that it has to do to create attachments. So for instance, when you create a request attachment, it takes in this structure, and then it uses the data in that structure. Specifically, it's using the ledger and the AnonCreds implementation to create that AnonCreds credential request, right? So previously I had this implemented such that this object is basically borrowing.
I think I see your point. I'm sorry. My question is, and this is precisely the problem that, to me, it's an extremely big problem. Why are the ledger and AnonCreds even part of that structure there? Like,
hmm.
you know, the question, like the point is, why do they need to be contained within these types when I fail to see the link, you know, and it's still widely within the workspace, and it doesn't help with anything at all apart from just making things a bit more convenient, while messing other stuff up. But why not just take the wallet and the OnonCreds, or not the wallet, the ledger and the OnonCreds as arguments to these functions?
Because these are associated types of the trait. So it's sort of borrowing in whatever data is required to create a request. So in this case, it needs ledger and OnCreds. But if you're working with like JSON LD W3C credentials, what it needs to create the request might be entirely different.
Okay.
So yeah, the imp actually takes in self of this.
I am seriously considering whether this is okay. So basically, all right. So that data structure is essentially just to kind of encapsulate the needed arguments.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And all right, so I see. Okay, so then what's the problem with the approach you have right now with the
Yeah,
references?
so yeah, as you can see, I've started going this way, where now I need these generics for this because, you know, obviously I can't do like
Right.
imp creds here. And so yeah, so this is working for the holder stuff, but then it's sort of mirrored for the issuer stuff. But here's a sort of unique thing that I'm running into. So firstly, for the holder stuff, where does it start? Sorry, let me find it. Yeah, so here is where it starts, right? You're a holder and you're initializing and you're using this format, and I've abstracted away the type, but because it takes in those generics, this format needs to know everything about what implementations you're using, right? Because there's sort of this chain of generics. You know, they come in there and then they need to be attached to the associated type. And that's working fine for holder. But maybe something that you can help me with here is, so this is another test using issuer and holder together, and it's within, you know, the run setup macro. And so this run setup macro, it has the profile within it, but the profile within it is like just an impl. So it doesn't, or at least according to the compiler, it doesn't have a defined type, right? So when I come down to, so when I start the issuer, I need to tell it what format is being used. But there's no way that I can know for sure what format is being used here. Like if I were to try to say it's the IndieCredX and non-creds that's being used here as the non-creds, then later on it's like, well, that's not right. I was expecting an impl profile as profile and non-creds, not an IndieCredX and non-creds.
Okay, but why doesn't it just inherit the type? Like, why are you specifying it directly?
Could I do that?
Yeah, that might work.
Um,
Is this on the same line?
oh no, now this is the. Ah, okay. Sorry, that might have fixed it. I forget
Yeah,
about the
because
existing.
right, it is a generic, but like you don't need to specify the type. It's just as long as it knows that it's a type that implements the interface, it's not gonna care. Yeah, I don't know. Like this whole mess will take a while to fix properly, and even the profile thing. But I have a dream that one day, you know, some instantiated wallets and ledgers and non-on-cred stuff at the top level of an agent can just get passed down and used accordingly throughout whatever components or piece of code it ends up with, because that's where these things would reside anyway, at the top level. So
Yeah.
maybe that has more generics. I think it has two.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, okay. Thank you. Very nice. I mean, well, while you're here, what do you think about this approach? Do you love it, hate it? Gets a
I
bit
think we
verbose.
talked about this trait thing for the format before. I'm not really sure what to say. To me, it seems like it's convoluting the problem quite a bit, especially for something that's supposed to be kind of well defined and with a limited number of possibilities. I might have just went for some sort of trait of not trait of enum, but I didn't necessarily study this a lot. So
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this
All
up
good.
for review?
Yeah.
This is part of the credit issuance v2, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's up for review.
Yeah.
I'll let it.
So yeah, that's why I didn't get to this yet, because I was in the weeds with something else. And I know that this will take a while to actually properly digest. But I will, and probably next week, and when that happens, I'll be able to provide a more educated opinion.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I sort of pitched it a bit more in the overview of that, in that MR or PR. So yeah, just when you get to it, we can talk about it. Cool. Thanks for the help on that, though.
Yeah, sure, anytime.
And I saw that you briefly unmuted yourself before this discussion started. Did you have any like kind of points you wanted to go through? We are a bit over time, but I don't think anybody minds. And if they do, you guys are definitely free to leave. But since you joined the call, I don't want you. I wouldn't be happy if you waited entire call to ask some question and then we just shut up the call. So your time, if you have anything.
I just have a small question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so there was some discussion about VDR tools being dropped, and the wallet is going to be, stay. So is there going to be a change in the workflow of how one creates a wallet? So right now I'm using the VDR tools to generate a wallet, and then just using the base wallet traits. But will I have to change that? Will I have to use some different kind of wallet after
No.
dropping
No, it's
of?
going to be the same thing. So VDR tools comprised of multiple things, multiple bad things, actually. So we just want to keep the wallet, as the plan was to kind of remove other stuff like ledger implementations, on-threads and stuff like that in favor of newer implementations. Now there is something that we could allegedly replace the wallet with at some point, but that's kind of out of scope for now. So the benefit is that by removing all the other stuff from VDR tools, well, we remove a lot of legacy code, but we only keep the wallet because that's the only component being used. But it's not going to impact the, the usage, like the current usage of things. The wallet will function the way it did function before.
All right, great. That's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Cool. So I guess that's bringing us to the end. Thank you all very much. It was a good call, good discussions, very rich call. So have a good week and see you another time. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Guys, good one.
Thank you.